Alright, today we're going to start looking at what we have are called prisms and what are called pyramids. So there's some similarities and some differences between these. So this title is called Classifying Solids, so we're having these three-dimensional pictures, but if we were to take this and unfold it, kind of think of like a box, a present that you have, if you were to unfold it and flatten it out, and you have this pyramid and you were to unfold it from the top and flatten it out, that's what we're going to call net. So the three-dimensional picture of it is right here, and the net is if it's unfolded and flattened, okay? So the first thing I do want to tell you is that we're either going to classify the prism or the pyramid depending on what its base is. So if we have a square prism like this, we could actually have the bases, this could be the base, and opposite this part could be the base, but technically this top and bottom or the front and back could be the base. Just depends on how you look at it with this. However, your base over here is always going to be off to the side. Okay, so when we unfold it, we have those bases like that. We also name our square prism. So some people say, oh, well, it's a square prism, but really what it's called is a cube. Okay, so if you say square prism, we're going to correct you and say technically that's a cube. Okay, but if you were just to write that out, if it's like a fill in the blank answer, we might not count it wrong, but we would just want to make sure you know that it's called a cube. Okay, so a three-dimensional square. Then over here, well, here's my square right here, and we can see that we actually only have one of those squares. And that square right here is in the middle. Okay? So we have what are called our bases, and now, yes, these were all squares, but in a prism net, your bases are always going to be off the side. And we'll see that in these next couple of examples too. Okay? So over here, the square pyramid is what this is called. Again, because we're going to name it. I keep spelling pyramid wrong. Sorry, guys. I'm switching my R and my Y around, but that's why, right? We double check our reading skills, our math skills, and our writing skills. So we got our square pyramid. So you notice that over here on the net, in the bases of a prism, they're always off to the side. And the base in a pyramid net is always going to be in the middle. Again, we're naming this depending on what the base is. So we'll talk about two more, and then we're going to kind of talk about some similarities and differences for it, okay? So over here, we have rectangles. And this rectangle and this rectangle are off to the side. Those are the bases. And those are actually a little bit smaller than these other ones. And let's talk about what these other things are called. These are called faces. So I'm going to put an F for face and a B for base. So I'm going to say base, and then the F stands for face. So in the net, either a prism net or a pyramid net, you either have the bases or the faces. And we'll talk about some things that we see. Okay, so in this one, we have two bases and four faces. We have two bases and four faces. Over here, we have one base and four faces. Then if this is a rectangle, this is going to be called a rectangular prism. So we can actually notice that the prisms, if you haven't noticed already, the prisms have two bases. And the pyramid only has one base depending on what that one shape is. So here's that rectangle again, right? And so this is called a rectangular pyramid. Okay, my picture didn't come out over here, but I'm going to draw it. So think about if you were to take up here, and this right here, guys, is called a vertex. So the vertex is where this net, if we were to fold it up, and they're going to meet. Okay, so if we were to unfold this right here, we'd actually have a rectangle right here, and that would be the base. And then we'd have these triangles off to the side once we unfolded it. Okay? So this is what a rectangular pyramid looks like with the net. Okay, so I'll just kind of shade over the base just a little bit. So a lot of times it's helpful if you shade your base depending on what shape it is, so we can see those similarities and differences. Kind of shade it in. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to do like this, and then we'll just label it the bases. And then here in the middle, if we were to unfold it, right there is the base in the middle. So let's talk about some similarities before we go on to the next one. If you guys see it, right here, the bases are always off to the side on a prism, where the base is always in the middle of a net when it's a pyramid. Okay? We can also see that prisms have two bases and that the pyramid only has one base. Another thing that you might notice is all your faces in the prisms are rectangles, and all your faces in the pyramids are triangles. And the reason why that is we're folding it up and we're meeting up at that vertex. Okay? So it's something to think about. The pyramid is always going to have those triangles as faces because they're folding up at that vertex. Okay? Alright, let's look at one more popular one, and then we'll get some things written down for us. Okay? So look right here. If they say my base is a triangle, so it's all folded up, so I can shade my base. Bases are always off to the side in a prism. And again, if you know that, all faces are rectangles in a prism. That's another way we can identify it. Okay, so we have two bases, three faces. Okay, over here, yes, these are all triangles, but look for where that vertex is. And then your base is going to be across the vertex. So that's something to think about too. So let's write that note. Base is across vertex. Okay, so if you see your vertex and you have draw an arrow down, that triangle right there is going to be your base. And again, yes, we have all triangles, and we're like, okay, well, which triangle is the base? Well, if you think back at these pictures, your base was always in the middle. So this is going to be your base, and then these are your faces. Okay, so this one has one base and three faces. So kind of let's think about that. Two bases and three faces. One base and three faces. We'll think about it. A triangle has three sides, so you're going to have a face off of each one of those. If we were to fold this up, this face right here would match up with this part would match up with this part, and then you got that middle rectangle right there. Okay, so don't just think that this one is a rectangular base, because a lot of people think base is bottom, so they think that rectangle is the base, but really in a prism, as well as in a pyramid, we label the base depending on what it is. So if there's two triangles in the prism, it's going to be a triangular prism because all the other shapes are rectangles. And then if you look over here, this one has two bases and four faces in that rectangular prism. The rectangular pyramid has one base and 4 faces. And again, that makes sense because every single pyramid has one base, because across that base right there is the vertex. So your base and your vertex are always going to be opposite sides of one another. Okay? Then, if your base is a rectangle, well, your rectangle has 4 sides, so that's why we have 4 faces, whether you're a pyramid or a prism, because of the fact that you're going there. Another thing that we can notice with the pyramid, your triangles are going around your base, and with a prism, our faces are going in between the bases. So all these things you can really think about. Okay? So let's sum it up, and we're going to keep practicing with this, but we just want you to be able to identify the similarities and differences first. So how many bases did all prisms have? So prisms were on the left. When we unfolded it, we saw that every prism had two bases, and they were off to the side. So all prisms have two bases. What shape were their other sides? They weren't a base, they're called a face. And we can see no matter what it was, those would be rectangles. And then how many bases did all pyramids have? Well, again, if we had a triangular pyramid, we had a square pyramid, or a rectangular pyramid, you name that shape based on the shape of its base. We could see that it only had one. And remember, that base is always across from their vertex in a pyramid. The reason prisms don't have vertex is we're not folding them up to one point. The bases are always going to be across from each other in a pyramid, and the vertex is going to be across the base in a pyramid. So pyramids have one base, and all the other shapes around it were triangles. And again, the reason why they're triangles is they're being folded up and they're meeting up at that vertex. Okay? So we can say, what are the shapes of the pyramid? Triangles, because they fold up to meet at the vertex. Okay. What do triangular prisms have in common with triangular pyramids? So let's look back. Triangular prisms versus triangular pyramids. So let's see what similarities they have. Hopefully you're saying their bases in common. They both have triangular bases. And I'm going to put the S in parentheses because a triangular pyramid has two bases, but a triangular prism has two bases, and a triangular pyramid only has one triangular base because it's across that vertex. Okay? How are triangular prisms different from triangular pyramids? Well, let's see. What do triangular prisms have that triangular pyramids have differently? So triangular prisms have two bases, and because the bases are across from each other, they don't have a vertex like the pyramids do, and all their faces are rectangles. Whereas over here, the triangular pyramid has also a triangular face, but it has a vertex because when we fold it up, and it also has the faces of it are triangles because when we're folding them up, we're meeting up at that vertex. So we can say triangular prisms have two bases, no vertex, and rectangular faces. But triangular pyramids have only one base because that base is across the vertex, so one base and a vertex. And its faces are triangular. So it's really important for us to know the difference between them so that we don't accidentally label something a prism when it's actually a pyramid, or something a pyramid when it's actually a prism. So the number one way to take away from it is if you're two bases, you're a prism. If you only have one base, you're a pyramid. And again, we can see no matter what these look like, the triangles were around that base right here. And so that way we know it's a pyramid. Okay? All right. Please let your teachers know if you have questions, and good luck on your assignment.